Doing, Ronin man? So you have you been threatened by "you will die alone" before? I have. I actually had several times, but it was never exactly by. If I remember correctly, it was usually by female friends who were trying to talk me into marrying. They would know that I was dating like a million girls, say in my 20s, and they were like, "You're gonna, aren't you afraid of dying alone?" And a pretty serious topic, right? Dying alone. So let's analyze this, because this is one of the big arguments of why you should get married. So it's a huge threat, and here's this article: the ultimate threat to single people, right? You'll die alone. So let's go with the first. Let's look at the logic of, will you die alone? Okay, like physically, is this what's going to happen? Going to roll out? And the next thing is, what does that mean to you, right? So first thing is, will you die alone? If you're single and you're not married, then you won't die with a spouse, obviously, but you could very well die with a friend. You might die. Most older people these days end up in some kind of care facility. So there's other people around. They have nurses around. You press a button and people come. So just because you're single, I would say that doesn't mean that you're going to die alone, right? It's really like just a physical. I'm not talking about like the moral anguish or mental anguish or anything. I'm just saying, like, will anybody be there next to you physically the moment you pass, right? We're going to talk about the value of that later, but I'd say if you're in a care facility, there's going to be somebody near you, but I don't know how much that's going to mean to you at the time. It's going to depend, obviously, on who it is, and a lot of it's going to depend on how you feel, right? Like, usually death is not very fun, right? So you're going to be like clutching your heart, you know what I mean, or choking on something. You know what I mean? Like, hey, like seriously, like think about dying. Like you're gonna die, right? It's gonna suck, right? Basically, it's gonna totally suck, And so the idea of death is just one of the scariest things humans face, right? So, okay, so will you die alone if you're single? Well, if you consider, okay, here's the logic that society has, is basically when she says you're going to die alone, what they mean, okay, let's translate this into human like language here. What they mean is that you will not die with a spouse. Okay, so a wife will not be there. Now, a lot of people would consider that a massive benefit, and especially married guys don't want their wives around that much. So the average married guy, probably, if you ask him, if you go to the average older guy, say 60 years old, and you say you might die alone, right? And then your wife might not be there when you die, and in very good chance he's going to say, "Oh, that'd be great." I try to avoid her as much as I can. She's already cheating on me, or we almost divorced 50,000 times. She drives me crazy. She makes my heart, gives me like basically heart palpitations. I get so angry at her, right? So there's a lot of argument that would say, even if you were married, right, and 80% of marriages in the U.S. end up in divorce, so getting married doesn't even mean you're going to be married, okay? Not to mention dying alone, because that's another thing, right? Getting married doesn't even mean being married, right? It doesn't. It's almost like the jackpot. Like if you go to Vegas and you're betting money and you walk out with $1 million, that's like if you actually are married after getting married, because 70-80% of people are not married after 10 years of having a wedding, right? So this argument is like falling apart it's on so many levels, right? Because if you can't even guarantee being married at all, and obviously it's not only can you not guarantee it, but the odds are highly stacked against you to even be married after getting married, then this whole argument is it's already toast, right? The argument's we've crushed it to the ground already, but let's keep going because this is quite fun. Okay, so let's look at the logic. First, let's look at the mathematics here. Okay, so when people get married, how many people are there, right? 2 people, right? You're a genius. 2 people, right? So, okay, so you and somebody else. Okay, now, when somebody dies, does everybody die at the same time? Like, you know what I mean? Like, did your parents, they die at the same moment? Does the whole city, do they all die at the same time? Well, during a Dresden bombing or a nuclear attack, yes, that does happen. So it can happen. And sometimes there'll be a car crash. And then the married couple will be together and they'll both die at the same moment. And again, I'm going to say, being in a car crash, you know, having your head smashed into the dash, blood everywhere, you know, all bones broken, next to your wife whose bones are flying everywhere and bodies being crushed. I just don't know how much fun that would be. I mean, I really wonder, like, even if a guy, let's say that a guy got married, right? So that, again, the odds are that he's not going to be married 10 years later. The odds are really high, almost overwhelming. But let's say that he's the kind of a luxury. He's kind of the lottery winner type of guy, right? So he's still married. Now, and then he doesn't, you don't spend like 24 hours a day with your spouse, right? Right? You know, you spend like maybe, I don't know how many hours a day, but, you know, not that many, right? So let's say you're in a car and you did happen to crash together. Now you could crash and she wouldn't be there, or she could be there, right? Same, right? But would that mean anything to you? I mean, would dying next to your wife, would that, like, literally, like, put comments below, like, would that mean anything to you personally? You know, okay, I personally, that wouldn't, like, being in a car crash and seeing, you know, my last, you know, kind of vision in life before I passed would be my wife, you know, exploding in a sea of blood against the windshield, or flying through the windshield and getting run over by a truck, you know, and then I die, you know, after that. I just don't see, I don't see that. I just don't see that as being very enjoyable. You know, it's like, that just doesn't sound like a lot of fun, right? So, okay, so we got the actual dying there, you know, and again, the mathematics are there's 2 people, right? So if usually one's going to die at a different time than the other, right? We don't die together, right? So, you know, generally a car crash is different, but again, a car crash, we've already totally destroyed that one, because there is no fun in watching, you know. I would personally, let's just say, for example, I got married and I loved my wife, and let's say I loved my kids and we're all in the car together, right? Now we crash, and just before I pass, I see my wife flying through the windshield, the kids hitting the back of my head and flying through the windshield, getting run over by a truck or whatever, you know, getting smashed up on the freeway. Now, in that case, I would be dying. You know, I hate to be laughing, but this is like, it's so stupid. The idea is so stupid and so poorly thought out that you just have to laugh at this stuff, because it's just so ridiculous. Like, think of the enjoyment we would have of seeing, like, not only your wife, but like all your kids, everybody dying at the same time. Like, imagine the happiness you would have, right? It's just so ridiculous. Like, you know, if I was going to die, right, and I'm going to die, obviously, but when I die, I would much rather die by myself. Like, I don't want to watch anybody else die. Like, I'm not a masochist. I don't like to see people in pain, you know. I'd much rather just kind of die on my own. And if the average guy, I can tell you this, is I know, like, from my dad's friends, when his friends die, they all have one thing in common. Guys are very different than women when it comes to death, in my experience. With women, I've noticed that they tend to want to be near my mom, right? So they call and they want to hang out, they want to talk, they want to walk, and they want companionship. But I found that most guys actually, surprisingly, maybe not that surprising once you think about it, but they don't actually want anybody near them, because now they're weak, right? They don't look good. They don't look strong. They don't, I don't know what the reason is, but I know that I've seen this is a real trend, is that guys, once they're in a weak position, they can't wipe their own ass or whatever, they don't want anybody to see them in that position, even though they're dying, and that's just the way guys are. I mean, this is guys that I know, like that they were my friends, my dad's friends. Once they get to that state that things are not good anymore and they can't, control their bowels and, they're laying, they don't want anybody to see them like that. They want people to remember them when they were strong, when they were virile, when they were doing things. You know what I mean? That's why most guys don't really want people to see them. The nurse comes in and they takes a shit in his pants and then they clean it up and, and that guys, I mean, I don't want that personally. It doesn't sound like a lot of fun. I mean, I don't want to put my friend through that, right? Usually your friend is the same age or nearby, right? The last thing he wants to see is like what's going to happen to him in a few years, I mean, death just sucks, right? And the idea that dying alone is somehow, some kind of like present or gift or like special thing of married people it's just totally ridiculous, because according to this article here in Psychology Today, like the biggest factor, or what do you call it? What increases the odds of dying alone or with somebody is having friends. So if you have friends, you're most likely to die with somebody else. And I'm going to even go farther and say, I just don't know how much that means. I really don't know. I think it depends on you. I mean, think about it for yourself. When you are in a very bad way, do you want people to see you or not? Do you ask people to come over when you're really in a bad way? I don't. I usually don't. And if somebody does come along, like let's say there's somebody who really cares about me and they really push through and they, you know what I mean? Like they're there for me in those moments. I would say, yeah, I mean, it probably does have some value for me. I've had that a couple girlfriends where, I was like completely fucked and they were there wiping my ass. I got really sick in China once and almost died when I was 23. And I had a girlfriend who like literally took my pants off and wiped my ass for like 5 days. And I had such a high fever, I don't remember anything. So, I mean, there is something there, like there is something like having someone that cares about you. And now she cared about me. Now, keep in mind, I had dated this girl for a month, right? I would say if I was still with her now, whatever it is, almost 30 years later, I doubt she would be the same way, right? Obviously, right? She's a totally different person, right? And she would not be there wiping my ass. We were in that Romeo and Juliet time, right? Romeo and Juliet, Juliet doesn't mind doing whatever she's got to do. And she's very fired up and very full of emotion, right? But the old lady, maybe not so much, right? So here we go. This woman here, she talks about her parents. Now, her parents were married for 42 years. The father died first, alone in a hospital room. His wife had been visiting him and in a family, but they all went home, and then he died by himself. And the kids, most of the kids were grown in other parts of the country. And so then she was alone, right? So again, the mathematics of it. One person dies first. So that means that even if you did get married and you stayed married, which already the odds are completely against you, almost nothing, then you died, you're probably going to die alone, because either one of two things. Either she's going to die first and she might die with you, and then you die alone because you're the only one left. Or obviously you're at work, or you're in your car, or any million of things that you might not be with her at the moment of death, right? And, I think, we sleep 8 hours a day, and a lot of people die in their sleep, right? Obviously, right? There's 24 hours in a day. 8 of those hours is 1/3 is when we're sleeping. So I don't know if I was sleeping and I died when I was sleeping. I just don't know how much that would mean to me, that I had somebody next to me that I died next to. Like, I don't even see that as being a benefit to them either. Like, that would totally suck, you know. You're sleeping away, you wake up and the other person's dead. Like, whoa, huge success there. You know, all the people, the bells come on, you know, everybody's cheering, you know, they died together. And of course, he was sleeping, they were both sleeping, but, you know, so if you die when you're sleeping, you're not even awake. How would you even know if they're there? And then what is the benefit to the person who's still alive? Like, does anybody think about the other people anymore? Like, I don't want somebody to, like, you know, like when someone dies is really traumatic, you know, especially if you like them, right? You know, it's really traumatic to find a dead body, right? So the idea that you're going to die alone and the other person's going to still be there, right? It's really selfish when you think about it, right? It's completely selfish. The whole idea is very, very selfish because we all hate finding dead bodies, especially of people we like, right? And we hate watching people die. We hate watching people go through pain. We don't like watching the videos of any kind of accident or something. You know, it's like, no, we don't want to see that, you know, unless it's somebody we really hate. You know, that's not something we want to see, right? So I just don't, you know, sleeping again, you know, let's see here. So marriage, according to research here, marriage is not a powerful predictor of whether you die alone, right? It just isn't, right? And there's a book called Party of One by Anili Rufus, and basically is a good example of that people prefer to die alone, you know. And I think that I think there's the other way to look at it. So I could say, okay, look, I probably am the type of person who wants to die alone. I mean, I don't want some other person to have to deal with me and have to go through the stress and everything. I mean, really, it's a lot of stress. It's almost like I'd rather have like a stranger find me or something, right? Because if somebody doesn't know me, I don't want to have my friends or kids or what. If I had kids, I don't want them to have to go through that, find their dad dead. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so selfish anyway. It's a dumb idea anyway. Not to mention the fact that getting married doesn't even like factor into much of the equation of being together, because even if you're married, you know, you go to work, you know, like people die young, right? Sometimes you die in accidents. And then the final thing I'll say is, besides the fact that even if you get married, you're probably not going to die alone. You probably will die alone. Sorry. The thing is like, okay, so imagine right now, okay, we don't know when we're going to die, right? Life is very precarious. Nobody knows the future, right? Let's say that right now you clutch your heart and you start having a heart attack, and it's a full on, you know, I forget what it's called, but it's like a, you know, a real serious heart attack, right? So you start clutching your heart. Now, apparently the pain is really intense, like from a heart attack. I mean, the pain is like so intense that you can't even think straight, right? You know, and obviously it's the same as if you're in a car accident, or a lot of deaths are quite painful, right? Now, think about this. When you're in a lot of pain, okay, do you think about other people? So let's say your tooth, when your tooth is getting drilled in the dentist, you know, let's say you got no Novocaine, right? Do you think about like love, friendship, and things like that while you're being drilled on, you know? Or if you think about some kind of accident you had, let's say you had some terrible accident, were you thinking like, well, your nutsack got ripped open and your ball came out, and, you know, your dick cut off, rusty spear through the head? I mean, were you thinking like, man, I wish somebody was with me right now? That would mean so much to me, and it would be awesome for them too. You know, this is just a great like reason to get married, because I got this spike through my head with somebody else. You know, with another person. Like, that's such a beautiful thing. It's a lovely thing. I want to see a movie of this. I want to see a movie of like people dying together with their loved ones. You know, it just sounds like really touching, you know, like, you know, it's just this stupid idea, guys. these reasons for getting married, they're just so patently stupid. Like, they're not even, no one has even thought about them, like, for 1 minute. That's how stupid they are. You know what I mean? Like, you just start, it's quite fun, like, go in your mind and think of the reasons, like if you're someone tells you to get married, just look at the reasons they tell you and start to think for yourself, like, does that even make any fucking sense? Like, well, that is that like, is that true? Like, is that even going to happen? Or even if it did happen, like, how would I feel? Just start dissecting this stuff, because, this one's already been, I think I've already pounded this one like a dead horse, but I really enjoyed this episode. So I hope you do too. So either way, guys, I'm off to sleep, and I will catch you guys next time.